Thanks everyone for joining us and welcome to our e-commerce insights webinar, where I'm delighted to say we've ditched the remote webinar setup and we are in a real life studio today. So I feel like we should be sponsored by Huel or something. I'm Duncan Copeland. I'm Client Services Director at Gene, and I'll be the host today. So I'm joined in this amazing studio by John, who's Head of Partnerships at Athos Commerce, by Ozzy, Founder and CEO of Akoova, and our special guest, Catherine, E-commerce Manager at Numatic International, home of Henry the Vacuum Cleaner, the British icon, Henry the Vacuum Cleaner. So yeah, great to have you here, guys, and thanks ever so much for joining us.
No problem.
Before we get started, a bit of background, I guess. So the three of us, Gene, Athos and Akoova, teamed up earlier this year for a research piece into e-commerce performance, and we published that as a white paper. That white paper is still available. You can go to gene.co.uk and download that now. But we thought we'd get the gang back together, so to speak, and include Catherine, who was one of the contributors for that report, and dive in a little bit deeper, look at how things have been going this year and look ahead to next year and try and unpick the e-commerce landscape as we head into 2026. We have had some questions submitted in advance, so thank you to everybody who submitted those in advance. We will try and keep ourselves on track and not to go off on too many tangents and save some time for those questions at the end. If you're tuning in live as well, you can submit questions and we'll try and get to those as well as best we can. Cool. So everyone ready to get started?
Yeah,
should we go?
Yeah, perfect.
So the first thing I wanted to touch on, and one of the bigger topics from the report, was around performance. So our research showed that 38% of businesses said that performance of their websites was their biggest challenge this year. But equally, we also know that investment in that area is a challenge. So that's a bit of a kind of, it's counterintuitive almost. Are businesses rightly cautious, or are we seeing technical debt form in real time when it comes to performance? Catherine, interested on your views on this one to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us are in a similar place where you're being asked to do more with less or more with the same, which works out as less. So it's looking for all those efficiencies and even simple things like keeping up with the roadmaps of all your different vendors, because particularly now where everybody is advancing so quickly, I don't want to say the initials this early in the webinar, but everybody is integrating AI, so new features are rolling out all the time.
I should have had an AI buzzer.
I know.
We've gone early.
I'm the one who's normally complaining about AI in questions, and yet here I am. But yeah, keeping up with the roadmap, because you never know what vendor that you already have might have a new feature that will work really well for you. And its capacities internally as well. You know, can you roll out the next thing? Can you justify to your senior management why you need this thing to do what? I think there's a lot of sounds good, prove it. Which before you actually do the thing, sometimes it can be a bit hard to prove it. Yeah. So I think it is cautiousness, but I think justifiable cautiousness.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, performance is that you take the phrase and then apply that through digital commerce, e-commerce, and commerce in general. And there's different aspects that come into the mix. And as Catherine's saying, is vendors are trying to improve their performance and the technology set that sits on top of some of these services that we're offering to consumers. But I then think some of the fundamentals we need to look at. So maybe we should be taking it back a little bit, trying to really define what performance is. And, one aspect of performance could be site speed. One aspect could be, conversion and how you're actually serving your consumers and customers in the end result. So I think it's understanding what we mean by performance.
Yeah, and understanding what metrics
and
Measure what matters.
And then baselining the metrics and then giving yourself an opportunity to grow, set targets and mean that there's achievable targets that can prove that ROI.
Yeah, and I guess if you're looking at pitching for additional budget, trying to tackle performance or tackle performance debt, I guess it's about understanding those metrics that are going to resonate with the C-suite or with the board or wherever you're going to get that budget. And for some, that might be, core web vitals or real user monitoring or whatever. but it also comes into other areas of the business as well, right? Is your customer service struggling? Is your NPS score affected? And what are your returns like? All these kind of things.
All the way down to like orchestration of orders, order management, warehouse management. It's everything that touches the entire operation should have a performance metric. Really should.
And an understanding of how they affect sort of downstream. Like a bit of unclear messaging on your site 3 days later becomes a real problem for your customer care team.
Yeah.
And having that wider business understanding, I think, can really help when trying to get buy-in for performance improvement.
Yeah. And sometimes, excuse me, just to spend isn't the way forward to improve performance. Yeah. It's understanding the tool sets that are currently you have and what the tool is doing and what the rest of the tools are doing, as well as as that user interface. So don't just spend for the sake of it to get a return. Look at what is existing and make small incremental changes for performance.
We'll probably come back to incremental changes a bit later on, but I think one of the things that at Gene, our head of engineering, Luke, always says is you can't change what you can't see, right? So that comes into that. You've got to be measuring the right things. You've got to be understanding what good performance means for your business and be tracking those metrics. And then, as you mentioned, incrementally, you've got to be. It's always on. You can't just we've updated this on the PDP and therefore our performance is now going to be excellent. It's always an ongoing.
As Catherine says, it affects everything. It's the business functions. It's the units within your organisation. They all combined will impact performance. So as long as you've got a metric and it can be measured, and then you can start actually having some metrics and targets.
Yeah, I think one problem also, as Catherine was saying, is, how do you justify the type of work? If you look at it as two type of work, you have revenue work, and then you have hygiene work. Hygiene work cannot be. It's not self-indulgence. It's stewardship. It has to be done. But on the same token, you don't want to have a budget conversation every time to justify hygiene work. So at Akoova, for example, what we do, we're trying to include that as part of our fee. Is all inclusive, so that we don't have to open up and have those budget conversations in order to do X, Y, Z, because sometimes it's difficult to justify. Yeah, and which also brings to kind of problem solving, because there's something you need to be constantly on top of. And at Akoova, we try to classify problems in 4 different ways. We have type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, which is learned from lean thinking. And basically you have type 1 type of problems, which is basically firefighting. There is a problem, you have to go back to normal as quickly as possible. Then you have type 2. Is the root cause analysis. Once they happen, you understand why they happen. You do that, especially if it occurs multiple times or if it occurs once, but to multiple clients. You need to go to the root cause and prevent it from happening again. And then you have type 3, which is the Kaizen, the continuous improvement. So there isn't a problem as such. You create a problem by raising the bar, and then you create a gap, and then you try to fill the gap. And then there is type 4, which is innovation, which is open-ended. There isn't a target as such, and that's something else. But they're all part of the problem-solving spectrum, for firefighting to innovation. And I think, as you said before, you have to keep constantly work on type 1 firefighting and type 2 root cause analysis to keep with standard. That's so important. But on the same token, you develop the muscle to then be able to tackle the type 3, which is continuous improvement, which is where you raise the bar. And that's how you can be on top of performance. And that's extremely important. And all of this is not just technology. Let's be clear. We all know how stability performance impact top line. We're talking about conversion rates. We're talking about customer experience and trust. But conversely, we see that at Akoova, how they can also impact on cost by reducing infrastructure costs and footprint, for example, when there is better performance. Okay, you get a better scalability. And also you have less firefighting. Everyone wins. So that has a big impact on top level and bottom level.
Yeah.
And I suppose what you're saying there, Oz, in a nutshell, is that look after the basics.
Absolutely.
For action point 1 and 2, you take care of the basics, then
Always.
you lead to innovation can come, and then
Yes.
that could be additional performance improvements. But look after the core.
Yeah.
And the core could be anything, as you said, from a business unit through to a piece of technology through to a member of staff.
Yeah, we look at it in a similar way at Gene when it comes to maintenance and support, and that idea of trying to make sure everything's included as standard, so you don't need to keep going back time and time again to ask for more
And you
budget,
save
because
time.
nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to go back and go, oh, there's an upgrade.
Certain
or-
things have to get done.
Yeah.
But define what you mean by performance
Yes.
as an organisation.
Indeed,
That's
indeed.
It. Yeah.
So, looking at performance then through the lens of peak, we've obviously just come off the back of Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and early indicators are that there could have been as many as a third of retailers who were struggling with slow pages, outages, even checkout failures. We know that Shopify had some issues on Cyber Monday as well.
Yeah.
Ozzy, I'd love to pick your brains on this. How can we be doing more to ensure that our sites remain stable during peak, whether that's Black Friday peak or seasonal peaks throughout the year for other different types of businesses?
It's interesting because we look at peak as it's a kind of show maturity on problem solving. Going back to the problem solving I told you before, tab 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, is what is the maturity level there and what is peak readiness. So when companies throughout the year, not just before Black Friday, they keep struggling with type 1 problem, firefighting. You get to Black Friday, just before Black Friday, and you are fragile. You're not ready. Vice versa, if you can handle those problems continuously throughout the year as a living process, and you do lots of type 2 problem solving, root cause analysis, and ideally also type 3, continuous improvement, you get to Black Friday, it's just a validation of the good work that you've done.
Yeah, it's like performances for...
And there is no
all year
gambling
round,
there.
not
Yeah,
just
there is
for
no
Christmas.
gambling.
Yeah.
It's just a validation, good work, you will be ready, and off you go. At Akoova, for example, we trying to make Black Friday the dullest day of the year, and typically it is.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, and it's all down to preparation.
Yeah.
Obviously, capability, preparation, but that happens throughout the year, not just the month before. So you constantly, going back to what we said before, you constantly have to be on top of those hygiene factors.
And I think this year, like, we got to Black Friday and I'm sat at my desk on the Friday, almost vibrating. I should be doing stuff and I wasn't. I'm like, oh no, this is good.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
we've
fun-
done
it's
everything
fun, isn't
right.
it?
Good
Yeah.
performance, good
Yeah,
planning.
we have that. We
Yeah.
bump into people at events and they're like, oh, Black Friday coming up. And
Yeah.
we're like, yeah, it's
But
just,
I
if
think-
you're doing things
I
right
think
all year round.
Oz
then-
has nailed it all year round, and this goes back to the performance piece. One thing we didn't talk about was the partners, your partners. It's whether it's agency, whether it's tech partners. Ensure you've got that relationship through the entirety of the year.
Yeah.
Have a watertight communication and conversation and
Yes.
relationship, and then you'll be in the best hands.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Best practice for
I
going into
totally
that
agree.
period.
Planning and collaboration is absolutely key.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So we could probably do a whole webinar on
Yeah.
performance.
Shall we?
And, maybe next time. Depends how
Yeah.
many people tune in. So I wanted to move us on to another key theme from the research that we did and from the report, and that's transformation. So the research that we did suggested that more and more businesses are prioritising incremental change over larger wholesale changes and what might have previously been, termed digital transformation, which makes sense, I think. But I'd love to get your experience on transformation in different businesses that you've seen out in the wild. And what I'm wondering selfishly is that incremental change just big digital transformation broken up and masked? It's like almost like transformation in stealth, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of has to be, doesn't it? Because pick your cliche, you know, trying to eat the whale, boil the ocean, all the rest of it. You know, nobody wants to do that big thing. The big thing is scary.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, if you pitch or talk internally about a larger project, the shutters could come down. Oh no, it's really big. We don't have the capacity, and you probably don't have the capacity for that size of project. But when you start doing the little things, and the little things can be transformational, particularly added together. You know, one of the things I did recently was just worked out what a 0.1% increase in our conversion rate would mean for the whole year, with no other variables changing. Just see what. And you know, and this a lot, and then that becomes easier to sell to internally. You know, particularly again, if you go into sort of senior management who might not be in ecom, not living and breathing all the terminology, you can say, well, look, this tiny little number does this, and particularly with things like conversion rate optimization, and to be honest, most things you could kind of attribute to conversion rate optimization. You know, it's the incremental becomes transformational.
Yeah.
I think there's a natural shift. I mean, you know, a few of us have been around the block a number of years in ecom, but the days of macro transformation, it seemed like the thing to do. Let's look at all our legacy systems. Let's change everything. Let's create a massive program. Have a program manager, multiple program managers with project managers in between, and then that's very, very hard to manage and track and do in one piece. So the natural flow would be to make these small, you know, the micro versus macro. And these little transformational pieces, and it could be something as simple as a technology stack or a piece of technology that you might have, and you've got the Pareto 80-20, you're not using most of that technology that you're paying for. Evaluate it, work with the partner, work with your agency, see if you can utilise more, and then you make the change into your operating flow and how you're using it, and that is a micro transformation. And I think that you then take that approach across all your stack, and that might be the way that we're moving into 2026-27.
Yeah, I think from our perspective as well, the micro change is sensible. You're de-risking. I think what's really important though is that you do have to have that macro view. You do need to kind of know where you're going.
For sure,
right? So
for sure. There could be license, end of life,
Exactly.
you know, there could be all sorts of concepts as long as you were aware of it. But to try and attack everything together, it's too
almost
much.
Don't tell people the name of the big project and
Yeah.
just put out these little bits that change. And yeah, you say like working with vendors, and I don't know if this is a common experience for saying, oh, we need to be able to do this thing. It's like, oh, well, you know, that thing can do this thing, and just seeing what you can do, particularly if you've had a piece of tech for a little while. Seeing what's new.
That collaboration is really important though, because, and I think, you know, we know from working together over the years that there's that shared experience that you mentioned, and if you've got that tight knit relationship with your partners, your agencies, the tech, and everyone's talking, everyone's communicating, and you're having that open and honest conversation,
and you're delivering success together, though.
It's not a sales pitch. It's
exactly.
you know, how can
there's
we
a
get
real
to,
meaning. What's the reason?
Where are we going?
Where are we going?
And how can we figure out how to get there together?
I think it's very important to have a North Star. You know, define a North Star, which is obviously maybe far away, but it doesn't matter. But it really brings everyone aligned. And even when you look at this small Kaizen step, continue, you know, improvement, you make sure that what you're doing is aligned, is going towards that direction, and also provides context and meaning to the people actually trying to create those improvements. It's as you said, is, you know, these kind of things, they do compound, but most importantly, really then kind of creates the conditions and the capability and let's say the psychology, you know, self-confidence within the organization to then be able to tackle even more important problems, you know, the more transformative things. But then you're at that point, you have the capability, you have the right mindset.
And it's important to add is that there's an achievability with the micro. You can achieve success.
Yeah.
It's easy to maintain and manage rather than put it in macro project that we all know. Time slips. You start going into phasing MVPs, phase 3, 4, 5. With the micro,
then somebody leaves.
It's attainable.
Yeah.
It is attainable. You're not relying on knowledge. We can target this, hit the target, deliver, move on.
Yeah, it's like, it's almost like agile development, right? You're breaking it up into small chunks, making sure we're doing lots of show and tells. We're keeping everyone in the loop.
And very often, what the difference I see is the companies and organizations who are really good at this kind of continuous improvement, incremental changes, and they do that effectively. They tend to own their roadmap. They define and own the roadmap. So instead of relying on a vendor to say, okay, what have you done? What do you provide? Or can I use this new functionality that you build or not? The discussion is reversed. You see, can you do what I need you to be doing? Because this is my roadmap. Yeah. That's what I need to do. It's a very different conversation, very different mindset. Whereas you don't rely on the vendor roadmap, you create the roadmap, but the vendor has to adapt to what you need.
And then speaking as a vendor, that's why it's important to have the truth, honest partnership, relationship, whereby we have a suite of features, not all are appropriate, understand the ones that you need for your requirements and make sure that you're fully enabled and engaged to utilise them.
Yeah.
That's the basics again.
And I guess in transformation, whether it's incremental or large scale, obviously requires investment. Yeah. And sometimes there's that gap, isn't there? And the report showed that gap between ambition, where the business wants to get to, what that North Star is, and perhaps the money that's there to get there. Yeah. What have you guys seen in that area? What normally kind of drives that gap? You've already mentioned, Catherine, internal priorities and perhaps resource, but what do you guys see with that potential gap between the ambition, what the board or the C-suite is setting out, and the reality on the ground of how?
I think you've got to be strong enough to break. You have to break it down because, as I said, going back to like what is achievable. A North Star is great, totally behind it. But how many times does that North Star change or may change over a 12-month, 18-month, 2-year period? If you break this down to achievable, then your investment in the achievable, what you need to do in R&D and development, or additional team members, or in addition, change to technology that you currently subscribe to, is then you can see an ROI when you've made that initial change. Yeah. Baseline it, monitor it, prove it, return, and then you rinse and repeat, and you keep going, and it becomes part of that bigger macro. Yeah. Rather than just one global tag.
Yeah, and you can adjust as well. And you can adjust because that allows for things like the market changing and target shifting.
And as we know, Catherine mentioned the 2 letters, which we'll come maybe onto at the end. But like the rate of change of this year means that you have to be able to adapt. So if you're planning 18-month projects, it means that you're a little bit more rigid and it's harder to adapt. So maybe it's that agile mentality.
And it can even be a sort of legislative change. Different usage, or we're in electrical, so there's different rules that come in, and we don't usually have good warning on them, but it does change, particularly so if you're running a longer project, then you'd have to have, yes, you should have a North Star that doesn't change, but there are circumstances beyond your control that would mean it has to, and so then it's not being so rigid or dogmatic that you're sticking with this one thing because it was what you said it would be, when that doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, I also see that where there is stability, confidence follows. So I think the key there is when someone in leadership needs to make an investment, going back to what you were saying, do they see this as a leap of faith, or do you see this as a no-brainer, the irrational thing to do? And if the system upon which you are investing are not stable and not performing well, that becomes a leap of faith. You're not sure about it.
Performance.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
That goes back to it. And so it's not just a matter of being brave. No, there is a certain level of self-confidence that is based on fact, on what you have. Stability, and not talk about just stability on the website, about everything, from processes, warehouse, dispatching, logistics, technology, ERP, warehouse, anything. It's their level of confidence. And I've seen the businesses operating on a very mature level, they're absolutely confident. I've seen in one case, one business being 100% affected by the pandemic, i.e. they stopped the business. At that point, they invested, doubled down on a so-called digital transformation because it was very complex. And actually, they provided them with an opportunity to make the change at a time where the business was closed, and therefore the risk element was kind of not there anymore. But they had such a level of confidence to do that. And they did it, and at the end of it, it was fantastic. They can do things that they couldn't do,
That's one way of freeing up the internal priorities, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's great.
It's an extreme, obviously. Yeah.
But I was mentioning risk. We haven't covered that, but that is part of it. And the risk factor when you work in smaller components, it's easier to manage and alleviate. And how many businesses have really got the skill set to be truly immersed in change management on a global, bigger macro scale? It's like condense, easier to control.
Yeah, this stuff's hard.
Yeah, it is.
Break it down. Yeah. So there was another standout topic that I think surprised us a little bit, and that was marketplaces and the amount of focus and attention that marketplaces are getting. We know that marketplace adoption is growing, but I'm interested in your guys' views on kind of what type of marketplaces that is. Is it marketplaces in a traditional sense, or is it perhaps new and emerging channels being kind of treated like marketplaces in a new world of product discovery, if you like? Catherine, I'll come to you first on that one, if that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it doesn't make sense for us as a brand to become a marketplace, but for me, it's almost going back to the super old-fashioned 3-5 Ps, and just place is now marketplaces. It's meeting the customer where they are. We know like a huge percentage of shopping journeys start on Amazon now. All but the biggest brands can avoid being on Amazon. We've got customers that still like to buy on eBay. eBay's a really solid channel for us. You've got more and more people buying on TikTok. There are other marketplaces separating themselves with cashback, and even sort of historic British brands coming back as marketplaces. So, ask your customers where they want to buy. Some of them like the reassurance of having sort of the same mechanisms, the same checkout. Amazon, love it or hate it. You know what you're going to get. You know how you're going to pay. You know the delivery is going to be good.
You know it's going to be left on your doorstep in the rain.
Depends on your local driver. I got a good local driver. I think it's just trying to make that as easy for yourself internally. So try and pick the highest SLA of all of them, match that across, and just try and make, because it does add complexity. You can't avoid it, but trying to keep things as similar as you possibly can across all the channels.
Where does that complexity come in? Is it data? What
Oh,
is
I mean,
complexity?
you mentioned product discovery in marketplaces, so you're obviously going to set me off in terms of what Athos can do. But I come from coming from a marketplace background. I think marketplace and the connotation around marketplace is changing. I see marketplaces anywhere where you can find a product that is from multiple sources. And you could even spin marketplace into traditional search engines. But I think the rise of agentic, which we might come on to as well, is like, can you say that is becoming a possible marketplace? Yeah. We don't know where it's going to end up with the capability of cross-purchase through multiple vendors, through one UI and one experience. But I think that the marketplace is just additional reach. Whatever we're talking about here is just wherever buyers are looking, where they're doing their discovery, then as long as that is linked back into you as a brand and a retailer and as an organisation, then I think marketplaces are healthy if you want to do it.
Yeah, and tying some of the threads that we've touched on so far together, if you're going to be looking at marketplaces in whatever form, you need technical stability. Your data needs to be good. The stuff you were touching on, your processes need to be good. You can't do any of this new
Not
and
only,
expansive.
but not only that, I mean, even a process level point of view, a marketplace adds complexity. That's a fact. Even, if you want to become a marketplace, much more complexity. But even if you want to use marketplaces, have your products into marketplaces, that's additional complexity. You have to think about, product fees and, stock fees and pricing fees and all the integrations. And then you want to avoid, if you use different marketplace, many integrations. So you now add another layer that allows you to simplify the integration. From a technology perspective, already there is some extra complexity. Then you have to think about how you're going to deliver those things. Are you going to do drop shipping? Are you going to, so if you don't have a maturity to start with, good luck with that.
Yeah.
So you're going to make stuff, your life much harder.
But ultimately, the reason for a marketplace is just that extension. It's where the crowd are at.
Yeah.
It's where the buyers are at. If the noses are there and the investigation and that discovery aspect is that touch point where consumers are looking, then certain brands, it becomes part of the strategy. But there is, I agree, Oz, there's a hell of a lot of complexity to understand that.
I was just going to touch on sort of the brand work side of it, because it does just increase your surface area.
Yeah.
So if you're doing the product discovery, or if you've got third-party copies out there, and you need to be in that mix to give customers the choice to come to the best option, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think obviously then there is the unit of economics, because there is a cost with marketplace. So if you are, like yourself, a direct-to-consumer brand, it's easier. You have margin you can play with and so on. But if you're a multi-brand, it's tough. Conversely, I've actually seen one of our clients, a quite famous sportswear, Irish sportswear, over a century old. They produce the goods in Ireland. They dominate the market, basically. And recently, I can say the name is O'Neill's Sportswear. And recently, they, if you go to the website, you can see they start selling Under Armour, Asics, and other brands. Maybe it's not really, I wouldn't classify as a marketplace as such, but they are opening up.
So they're a house of brands rather than a
to
brand
other brands,
house.
and that's working pretty well for them. So their brand is so strong that actually for them makes sense to then distribute third-party brands.
We've had conversations with clients about that, and that the strength of brand is interesting there, right? Because people are coming to you because you're well known.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it also gives you that opportunity as a brand to test the water a little bit. Like, do I want to go full scale into this over here, or do I want to maybe just introduce a couple of alternative product lines, test the water a little bit, see how it goes?
I think there's a lot in marketplaces that you can test, like even with sort of rolling out internationally. It can be a good way to see if there's some demand without having the cost of setting up your own store, and to see what's there. There's a fashion brand that I follow that recently set up their own marketplace, but as a resale of their own stuff, which made it super easy to list products, because they had the product catalogue on there. So you can just say, well, I've got that, I bought it 2 years ago, it's in this condition, done. So was a really interesting way of doing your own marketplaces, and for fashion, combating things like Vinted.
Yeah, I think I can guess who that is. It's a nice technology, that. Yeah.
Good luck combating Vinted as well.
Well,
Yeah.
trying.
Yeah.
Cool. We're making really good time. So I can move in.
Carry on.
Yeah, I can move in some of the backup questions. So this one's going to be a little bit more quick fire, I think. Hopefully, if you could fix one thing in e-commerce, one thing that you feel would have the biggest immediate impact, what would it be, and why?
Our conversion rate that we're happy with, 3% average as an industry.
Cool. Okay. Nice.
We just need to fix it. Why are we happy with 3%?
Like it. Some people are watching this thinking 3%.
3%. If only at 3%.
Yeah.
And that's that's industry average, and it's just it always used to be about just getting eyeballs onto site, but surely we're here to generate revenue by selling items, and because of that, you want that interaction be one-to-one, convert every time they interact, wherever that touch point is. But then that
can be so hard to measure, can't it? Because we're the brand site, we know a certain percentage of people visiting My Henry they want to buy in bricks and mortar, but they come in and doing a bit of research. Fundamentally, they're still buying a Henry somewhere, which is great, but so hard to measure.
Yeah.
What your I guess your true conversion rate?
Yeah. But that then gets into the realm of something else I'd like to fix is data. The fundamentals of data, and there's 3 pillars really around data: is your product data, your customer data, and your brand data. And you bring them all together, and I think they all need replenishing and resurfacing. And the more information you have at a granular level, and again, it's coming to this micro granular level, the more idea you can baseline a performance, and then from that performance, then you have the ability to grow and scale.
Can we have GA4? Can we have Universal Analytics back
Yes,
and not
please.
GA4?
Yeah.
I feel
Can
like,
we fix GA4?
Yeah, I just want UA back. I feel like I've lost all my superpowers.
Yeah.
Catherine, what would be your one fix?
Oh,
Apart
I think
from awkward questions thrown at you on a
desperately
webinar.
trying to think what I said in our prep.
on the spot,
Yeah.
in the spotlight.
I think allowing consumers to do more self-serve. I know some people hate it, but doing things in I personally, is my own bias, I guess, prefer to do things in my own time over a weekend. I know when people aren't there. I don't expect all customer service teams to be working at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. So I find that really convenient, and then it does free up your customer care teams to be doing the actual customer care, the more complex work. If everybody could have a good chatbot that can answer all your basic questions, set up returns yourself, good knowledge bases, and if you could just flick a switch and be able to do that, that would be great.
That would be nice. Yeah. Oz, what about you?
I'm gonna make it a little bit. I won't be too specific, sorry. Because these things are very situational. It really depends from situation to situation.
Brand, company, organisation.
It's all different. So, without diving into a specific problem, what can you say? However, going back to what you said is, you have to have some certain level of system thinking in terms of you have to connect the dots. You have to understand. I mean, I see so many people making decisions out of spreadsheets or making decisions through social proof. I've heard this person or my friend, my mate. I mean, some people make decisions in a pub because their mate, after 5 pints, tell them X, Y, Z.
Don't know anybody.
We all
No,
fat.
never.
We all fat. I mean, how can you make these decisions like that? That's insane. So people have to understand that they have to put some work into the decision making. You can't just look at it from one angle with one lens, spreadsheets. As you said, sometimes you have to do things. You need to understand that there is a brand impact. It's just the right thing to do. I know it's difficult to quantify, but so what? The old age. You can't manage what you can't measure. Bullshit, sorry. Sometimes you have to manage stuff that you can't measure.
So earlier in the year, I did a talk about quantitative versus qualitative data, and we're saying that, and everybody's going, "Oh no, we're marketing and ecom. We must be about the data. We must be data driven." I'm like, do you know? Sometimes when you get that little survey of one, that gives you that little nugget, and you start with an anecdotal thing one person has said, and then you follow it. Oh, this is a big thing. Right. And then you probably can find some quantitative data about it. But that initial thought it can be like a gut feel or something somebody said to you at the pub after 5 pints.
But that could lead into it. It's about understanding what you're meant to do with this data. So we did a piece around action. What is actionable analytics? You have the analytics and it's all presented in these beautiful reports and spreadsheets, but you've got to be able to understand this data that's presented in front of you. But what are your end gains?
My first 5-6 years of my professional career was at a research center, biomedical research center. Okay, so it was all, we did all sorts of data analysis for epidemiological studies to the lab. Data was everything I was doing. I was building statistical, mathematical modeling and so on, and then I moved away. It was too boring.
You moved to ecom from there.
I was just about to tee you up for another webinar, Ross, there.
And so data is very powerful, but there are limits. You need to understand what the limits are. There is an old, saying, if you want to, if you manage by average, you end up running an average business. Okay, so sometimes the data allows you to create hypotheses, to see patterns and so on, but then, as you say, you have to dig very, very deep to prove or disprove your hypothesis.
I think some of it's human behaviour is weird.
Totally, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, Rory Sutherland talks about it a lot. He's done some fantastic talks on ignoring your finance director, basically, which is dangerous territory to get into. But no,
Totally,
But we, sometimes we often second guess. We're second guessing what that consumer is going to be, and then when we look at segmentation, we do segmentation, and again, going to get back to this micro and macro.
Yeah.
Sometimes we segment in a wider scale, and that's not accurate.
Yeah, we've got some clients, and that's the true test, right? Is you can say you're customer first, but actually being customer first is regularly seeking that feedback from customers, even if it's small, or using that data that you're getting, not just in spreadsheets, but what you're hearing on the phones, all those kind of things.
Totally.
That's the stuff that, whether you're layering them together or whether you're just looking at that as a kind of starter for 10 and then really kind of getting into the detail that you said, Catherine.
But I'll give you an example. When I used to be CTO of online retailers, what I would do, I would get the technical team and say, go away from this place. Leave in customer service. Leave with the marketing people. Leave in the warehouse. Go and see what's happening in other places. Because only then you can, when we say being in the Gemba, you have to be there, see things with your own eyes, and not just to rely on some reports and so on. That doesn't tell you enough.
So down with spreadsheets. That's the takeaway there.
Down with data, also.
Down with data. Data's
No,
data's not the end of the conversation.
No, but having said that, data becomes an extremely important, especially in AI. You have to own your data. Absolutely. It's so important.
Cool. So, like I said, we're doing well on time. I think what we'll probably do is flick to some of the questions that we've had in advance, and give people a chance. If you're tuned in and you want to ask a question, hopefully those questions are going to appear for us in a minute on a screen we've got here in the studio. So get your questions in, and we'll try and get to some of those in a second if we can. I'm going to start with a platform question. So this was submitted by one of our registrants who's considering Magento open source and Hoover versus Adobe Cloud, and asked us how would we rate that strategy. So I'll kick us off if that's cool. I think we were chatting about this before when we were prepping, and I think both excellent strategies, and I think a phrase that we use a lot at Gene when we're asked this question, rather than just saying it depends, which is the tempting politician answer, is to say, try and put business before technology. So where are you? What are you trying to achieve? Where are you looking to go in 18 months, 2 years' time, but where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And then try and assess the platform market with that lens. And you mentioned earlier, Oz, following the crowd a little bit. I think there's definitely a lot of that. LinkedIn is like an echo chamber of platform feedback.
One goes back down, the other comes up.
Yeah, shut LinkedIn and look internally at what you guys want to do as a business, and then only then can you kind of look at platforms, I think. And both routes, Adobe Commerce Cloud, excellent. Open source plus Hoover, excellent. Both viable options. Some are right for some businesses, some are right for others.
I would say it's smart thinking. Smart thinking because the person clearly knows what the options are, and it makes sense to then evaluate. Now, I think it's key to understand the reasoning behind. Make sure it's not just a so-called knee-jerk reaction. Make the decision. Maybe it's sometimes you face something difficult, but take this as an opportunity to make a more strategic decision. I'll give you an example. We had actually a client that went through a similar situation. They decided to then move on open source. But what I liked about it was how strategic the decision was, because in this specific business, it's quite unique as a business. And I love the business. And they made a decision because they thought that they are creating with the technology a quite valuable intellectual property. They're creating a stack which is unique for their unique business, and they can add valuation, real money, into the value of the company. When there will be an exit. So that's smart strategic thinking. It wants to own the technology, and with open source you can own the technology. That makes total sense. Now, from our point of view at Akoova, we're trying to make the two options the same, so that you don't feel like if you go to what we say side grade to Magento open source, doesn't feel like a compromise. It shouldn't feel like a compromise. So when you run, for example, Magento open source or MageOS on Akoova, is as enterprise as anything else. It's total enterprise. So you don't feel like you are compromising. You are making a decision based on your needs.
Yeah,
and that's the key.
You've touched on something that I think is really interesting there as well. And again, we could do a whole webinar on platforms, I'm sure. But with the options that are available now, it is really important to think strategically, because there are now wider options, even if you just look in the Magento Adobe ecosystem, where you've got Adobe Commerce on cloud, you've got the SaaS, you've got Adobe Commerce Optimizer, you've got open source, you've got Hoover doing great things, you've got MageOS. So even within that mini platform ecosystem, you've got 5 or 6 different options and flavors to consider.
Totally, and I think it's very important again to think about strategy. Step back and think, for example, people making an investment in platform. So when you make an investment or a reinvestment, you're thinking about at least 5 years down the line. Okay, so for example, Adobe is moving on SaaS. Everyone knows now. That's clear. So you have to think about what does it mean. If they invest £1, how much of the pound goes into the SaaS product? Probably 98 cents, I would say. Guessing, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Pounds, cents.
We knew what you meant.
So
we know what you
pennies, whatever. And how much of it is going onto the current the legacy offering, current offering, whatever, which is the, for example, the cloud PaaS instead of SaaS, for example. And when you look at it, then you have to make a decision as a merchant. At some point you're going to be under the pressure from account executive and all of these kind of things to move on to SaaS. It's going to happen. If you're ready to make the move, that's great. Okay, that's the path you choose. But if you're not okay with that, then you have to start thinking, what are you going to do? And there are lots of conversation and thinking strategically, again, as data. I mean, how many companies now have data scattered all over different SaaS tools there? And with the data becoming so important, you have to think about it. Some other companies, now they start thinking, after what happens to Co-op and Max Spencer, the security is extremely important. So now conversation and decisions are not just based on, do you have the functionality or that functionality like it used to be in the old days, quite, childish in my opinion. Now conversation are, okay, what about the data? Where am I going to be in the next 5 years? Is this the right bet? What about security? There are so many more important things to consider.
Told you we could have done a webinar on this.
I know,
didn't I?
yeah.
I've even got time to come to you guys on that.
No, that's fine.
Next question that we've had in advance is, how can smaller brands differentiate and ensure that their decision-making drives growth through innovation rather than increased technical debt?
That's a good question.
It's a good question.
It's got to be brand side.
You're throwing that one over the fence.
Yeah. That's volleyball.
It depends on the brand, I'm going to say. It really does depend on the brand. So if we put the marketplace conversation back into the mix, that brand would know whether they want to feel like they're a brand that should be out and maybe less saturated as a brand when they're on a marketplace. Yeah. It's a really difficult conversation to have and particular answer to answer. It does depend
sometimes
on the brand identity.
This preface, like going in really eyes wide open, taking on some technical debt, knowing that you're going to fix it later, and having an actual timeline for that. Not that it's a mythical later. not always the worst thing. So if you're
No, that's
trying
fair.
something out but doing it very knowingly,
Yes.
so sometimes again we're going back to sort of data, but also a bit of feel. You got to try some things to know whether
And
it's going to work.
quickly.
Yeah,
Quick, yeah.
and quickly make the decision if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But you don't need to spend a lot of money as a brand.
It's those themes that we've touched on already, right?
Technology out there, and again, a lot of platform development and what the platforms are doing could cover most aspects, 80-90% of what a brand might like to do. If a brand wants to do something else that the tech isn't available, just have a look, have a conversation. The tech is available.
Yeah.
To cover most touch points where consumers make purchases. Yeah,
definitely. Final question that we've had in advance then. So with AI's impact on search and product discovery, what steps can we take to ensure that those capabilities genuinely improve conversion rate rather than just add unnecessary complexity? I'm looking at you already.
Okay. No idea what this right. So
What's search?
and a real impact is around product data currently. I've had a number of conversations with agencies, consultants in this space that look after product data. We're starting to find emotional usage attribute data points in relation to products that can really extend this product entity at a SKU level. And when that is engaged and surfaced on agentic touch points, that conversational search, which is the realm that we're in as another channel, people are asking for a particular 3 or 4 sentences around why they want something. And with that emotional usage, the low level, touch points around product data, you're in a good foundation to be exposed and found, purchased and kept. That's the thing. What conversational is, if somebody's putting a real reason why they want something, and if there is a match, then there's a less likely for return. Unless that product doesn't actually match. But
that's a really interesting angle. You and I have talked about agentic a lot, right? And looking at it from a search lens as well. What I'm hearing from you and what I see from colleagues and people that I talk to in the search space is the same with optimizing for LLMs versus Google, and kind of what I've just heard from you then is get your data fundamentals
just get your data right.
And it's the same with search. If you're optimizing for Google, there's with that again we could do another webinar on that. But with that, if you're doing your fundamentals right, then it's gonna stack up for a lot of this advancing.
And it's just that shift away from keywords. It's like, what is your product? Be as rich as you can with your product data.
I think it's very important. It has to be able to answer questions within specific context. I'll give you an example. I like running, sprinting on the track. So if I looking for a pair of shoes, spikes, I run, let's say 400, 200 meters, and I have specific needs. So for the training, I do not want carbon plates because otherwise I'm going to injure myself if I do it too often. So I want something which is stiff enough, but not that stiff. I want something that helps me on the bend to keep traction. I want, some cushion because that helps. So you start providing some context. I'm not that young anymore, so I sort of want something that doesn't.
I'm smiling. This is the new search.
So all of a sudden, if you provide, I've got problem with pronation. Okay. Can you provide some stability shoes? And so all of a sudden, if the product has enough information that can fit my context and answer my specific questions, that for me as a consumer is extremely valuable. I can make a good decision.
And take what I was just said from his voice. When we get to that realm, from agentic, you just talk, and an interface is served. Where you've got a perfect match for what you need.
Exactly.
Yeah, just try and get away from thinking in search terms. Like, I'm not putting in best vacuum cleaner in the UK. And I think it's working with sort of that consumer intent. And like from our own sector, we know something like 75% of vacuum purchases are disaster purchases. Right. Something's gone wrong, their old one's broke, they need one now, and it's quite an emotive thing. And I think all of us have had. When you get to a certain age and a household appliance is broken and it's the end of the world.
Yeah,
Tell me about it. I've got my guy who fixes my dishwasher on speed dial.
Nice. But then, we have sort of funny little problems as well where the LLMs don't catch up because sucks can be a good word for us. This vacuum sucks is a 99% of the time people use it is actually a positive. Okay. So getting the LLMs or even
there's a learning.
Or even our review analysis. Sometimes you say these are all your negative tone reviews, and you're like, no.
Nice. I don't know if we've got any questions that are feeding through. I'm just checking my live feed, if you like. And I think, to be honest, unless any pop up really quickly and they're quick fire, I think the questions that we've had in advance have been excellent and kind of taken us to time. So
excellent.
I think I'll take that opportunity. Yeah, no further questions, and I'll wrap up. So thank you guys. It's been really enjoyable conversation. And fantastic to do so in such a nice environment. Thank you, Catherine, for coming along and joining us,
problem.
And thank you.
Nice day out.
Thank you to the guys at Athos, Akoova, and of course Jean for pulling all of this together. We will be providing a recording which will be available soon, so you can rewatch if you want, I guess, or share with your colleagues. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, guys. Thanks, and looking forward to catching up soon.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks, Scott.
Take care.
Thank you.